Hey church, we are back in my backyard for Proverbs on the Patio tonight. Chapter 11, we'll jump right in a couple of verses. I want to remind you guys that we are now 11 chapters into a 31 chapter book. So we're about a little over a third of the way done. So some of you, thanks for making it this far. Hope you've been reading through the book of Proverbs. I always encourage people, if you don't know where to start reading in the Bible, I encourage people to read a proverb a day. Some people a psalm a day, psalm 2 or 3 psalms. Psalms are a little bit shorter, but especially in the Old Testament, these are simple, easy books of the Bible to begin reading. So with that being said, I want to jump into chapter 11, and there are a lot of things at play here, a lot of ways we could go, a lot of verses, but in the first couple of verses, we see a little bit of a contrast. There is the dignity of the righteous, and then there's the humility of the righteous, and then there's in essence, verse 2 really sums it up. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is wisdom. One of the old Hebrew proverbs used to put it this way: just as water seeks the lowest level, righteousness and even exaltation seeks the lowly, the humble, as it were, according to verse 2. But then in verses 5 and 6, we see that the righteousness of the blameless keeps his way straight. We're going to see over and over that there is a straight path, those who do what's right consistently, right? Most of us can do all right for a day or two, but it's when you go on the same route, you keep being consistent, that big things begin to happen. Some of us want our lives to be turned around in just a few short days. But what we see over and over in the book of Proverbs is that we're encouraged to stay on the straight and narrow for a long, consistent period. If you want to get your finances straight, it's going to be a long, consistent road. If you want to lose weight, you got to be on a long, consistent road. But then he gets into some more generic ideas. Verse 12, whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. I just want to encourage you guys, if there's ever a verse to embrace this week, this is it. I've seen a lot of Christians lose their testimony because they want to belittle somebody they disagree with, somebody they don't like. Sometimes it's even another Christian. But it says in verse 12, when you belittle your neighbor, you lack sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. You know the old saying, man, don't open your mouth or keep your mouth closed and people will think you're wise unless you open your mouth and reveal otherwise. Like, we know that often people can look smarter than they are simply by keeping their mouth shut. If you're not smart, keep your mouth shut. But even when you are smart, sometimes it's wise to keep your mouth shut. Verse 13, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. I think one of the most important aspects of a true friend is somebody who doesn't just share your business with everybody, isn't always running their mouth. If you run into somebody who's always talking about people, it's not going to be long until they're talking about you. But then verse 14, where there is no guidance, a people falls. Another way of saying this, where there's no vision, the people perish. It's not just talking about like leadership and vision and somebody having a plan. In essence, what this verse is saying is where there's no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. When you and I surround ourselves with wise counsel, it helps us make wise decisions. The idea of this verse is not, hey, we need vision and long-term planning. No, you need counsel. You need wise people around you. Certainly vision has its place, but in this context, where there is no guidance, a people falls. Over and over, we saw this in in the people of Israel, and in books like 1st and 2nd Samuel, where there would be a king who would just do whatever he wanted. He would have vision, but no consultation. He wouldn't listen to the wisdom placed around him. If you want to get far in life, you need to surround yourself with people who will tell you what you need to hear sometimes, even if it isn't good news, right? But in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. This week, a lot of our leaders have been getting together and talking about our church, decisions for the future, indoor, outdoor, online, what that looks like. And certainly I have an opinion. I'm the most opinionated person I know. But then I hear from some of our leaders, I hear from some of our staff, and in an abundance of counselors, if everybody sees it one way, all right, well then it's probably safe to do that. But even if they don't, if there's 4 opinions at the table, at least we will hear from every point of view and then be able to make a decision, knowing maybe some of the pushback we're going to get, knowing how some people might perceive it, because we haven't just gone rashly and done whatever we want. So if you're making decisions, this is why we believe in prayer, certainly hearing from the Lord, but also surrounding ourselves with Christians who can speak truth into our life. This is one of the reasons it's so important to be involved in a small group. Our groups are on a break right now. Most of them are coming back on September 20th. We're going to launch all of our groups. Some are online, some are in person, some are a combination of both. But when you have people around you, it says there is safety. You are protected. Skip on down to verse 24. we're going to get into a proverb here that really doesn't make sense. It's one of those God's economy ways of thinking. It says, one gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. On paper, we say, man, if I don't give my stuff away, I'll have more. But this proverb says there are some people who give freely, they're generous, and yet they have more. And then other people who are stingy never seem to have enough. They may physically have more, but they never seem to have enough. They're never satisfied. They suffer want. This is a biblical principle that is hard for us sometimes to understand, but it's true. Guys, the more I give away, the more I actually have, because the more I understand what is worth, what has value. And so I want to encourage you guys to follow this principle. Understand this. There's the economy, and then there's God's economy. There's money, and there's God's view of money. There's income, and then there's understanding who we are and what we do, right? So the next verse puts it this way: whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters will himself be watered. This sounds too good to be true. And certainly you can be unwise and you can go give all your money away. Like, the idea here is someone who's consistently generous always seems to find a way to be generous. I know so many people who say, Pastor Mark, I would be generous if I had money. And I always tell them, no, you're going to be as generous with $1 million as you would with $10. You're going to be as generous with a high income as you are right now. Once we meet our needs, right? I think the number is $70,000. They say in the American culture that most people, once they meet $70,000, there's not much happiness past that. Like if you make 170, yeah, you have more money, but 70 is where people live comfortably. Their bills are getting paid on time, and they seem to find that middle class lifestyle. And that's kind of the number that when people get there, their happiness goes up from poverty to 70, and then it just kind of levels off, unless you just get extravagantly more than that. But here's the deal. For most of us, we're like, I need more, I want more. And the idea here is, no, when you're generous, you're kind of modeling who you are and what you are with this much, this much, this much, or this much. So understand this. Whoever brings blessing will be enriched. The one who waters will himself be watered. We want to be people who give, who produce, who bless others. We don't want to be people who are constantly suffering from want because we think we need more than we currently have. So I'll put it this way. I know that right now there are some in our church who have lost their income. Most of our people still have their jobs. Incomes have tapered off over the last couple of years. All right, they were rising much quicker in the 60s and 70s than they did in the 80s and 90s, and even now in the 2000s. But our incomes are still relatively higher than they've ever been. Now, certainly there are some disparities. There's always going to be disparity, and I understand that there are some watching this, man, you are below the poverty level and you are struggling to get there. You are struggling to feed your family. But I want to say this. It never seems to matter how big our houses are, how many vehicles we have, or what our income is. We always seek more. We want more. We desire progress. Don't allow our desire for progress to rob us of the opportunity to be generous. And then down at verse 30, he says, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and whoever captures souls is wise. Another rendering here would be, wise men, they capture souls. He that winneth souls is wise, is how the King James puts it. In other words, when you're a wise person, souls are drawn to you, people are drawn to you, people want to be around you. So this really becomes a question for us that we might not want to answer. Am I wise? Well, the question becomes, do people want to be around you? Do people look to you for advice? Are people texting you? Are people reaching out to you? Are people wanting your input, your advice? Because if we have wisdom, the Bible says it draws people to us. It draws people ultimately to the Lord. So here we have in this chapter, tons. There's so many verses I didn't read. Tons of avenues to really look at and say, man, do I have wisdom? Am I drawing others to myself? Do I have enough wisdom because I have surrounded myself with wise counsel, and by that we have safety? Am I somebody who's generous, or am I stingy? Over and over through these passages, there are common themes over and over and over. And so my question and challenge to you is really this simple. When you think of wisdom, do you think, man, that's something I've got, that's something I'm working on, or that's something that the Lord has really given me? Or do you think, man, that's something I'm still working on? Here's a little bit of a test. Are people drawn to you? Are you generous? I didn't ask if you want to be generous. I didn't ask, do you hope to be generous one day? Are you generous now with what you have? Say, Pastor, I don't have much. I know of single ladies in our church who are so generous. During this whole pandemic, they've been coming weekly to drop off food, and I know their situation. It was a struggle. They have embodied generosity in the midst of a difficult season, okay? So please don't say, I want to be generous. Are you wise, right? Are you so wise that people are drawn to you? Are you generous, right? And then number 3, are you surrounding yourself with people who are? You say, Pastor Mark, I'm not generous yet. I may not be wise yet. I may not be drawn to people. Okay, well then surround yourself with people of spiritual wisdom. My first encouragement to you, you know what it is. Get into a group. When our groups launch on September 20th, you need to find a small group where you can know people and be known, where people can encourage you. People can not just hear your story, but offer insight, offer advice, offer wisdom because they've been down this road before. Guys, there is nothing new under the sun, as Solomon said. Finding wisdom is not difficult. The Lord actually says if you want wisdom, pray for it, ask for it. And one of the ways we find it is by surrounding ourselves with wise people. So my encouragement to you, don't walk away discouraged because you want wisdom. Decide you're going to get wisdom. Surround yourself with wise people and watch what the Lord might do. Church, chapter 11 in the books. Looking forward to Sunday online this weekend. And then it's going to be online on Labor Day weekend. And then on September 13th, we're going to begin gathering weekly outdoors under the tent. What I can guarantee you is this. We are going to begin meeting weekly outdoors under the tent. We are still looking at the possibility of going indoors and meeting as well. But I can assure you that starting September 13th, we're going to meet weekly outdoors under the tent. Will we go indoors? Eventually we will. When? I don't know. I'm not sure yet. We're going to wait and see with all the schools opening back up and the colleges opening back up, what takes place, what happens. Here's the great news. We've been meeting under the tent pretty consistently now every other week. And guess what? We have not had any outbreaks in our church. We haven't had any outbreaks on our staff. So the good news is, because we've been cautious, because we've been safe, we've been able to protect our people and we've been able to protect our staff. These are big deals to us as a church. So yes, we're going to weekly services starting September 13th outdoors under the tent. After we start to get that under our belt, we'll probably move indoors at some point. I don't know when, but I know this. We are moving toward regular services. Right now they're outdoors. One day they'll be indoors. Thank you for being faithful, church. We love you. We're praying for you. Hope you have a fantastic night, and I'll see you online this Sunday, and then again next Wednesday as we jump into chapter 12. Have a great night.